When I think about misogyny and hip hop and everything now, it's never necessarily a question of why anymore, because I understand, because some people, that's their lifestyle, that's why they want to talk about it or whatever. But it's also you also have to pay attention to the actions of them as well now. You know what I mean? And it's hey, this person, they talk about X, Y, and Z, and it's if their actions kind of line up and they're super, if they're just kind of that way personally, or if they're just kind of that way in a personal sense, or they just do that regularly amongst the people that they talk to or amongst the people that they address, then I feel that's kind of just them being them. But it's just we have so many people here that we can also tune into and tune out of as well. So it's just I feel it's kind of dwindling, and it's kind of making its leave, because people aren't necessarily focusing too much on making a compelling message by being misogynistic. It's more or less people are more or less being a lot more personal with themselves than they have ever been musically, in my opinion. Because people don't necessarily be oh yeah, I have to talk about women in my records now, so people can actually listen to it and be oh yeah, I'm desirable, I'm this. I feel in a sense people are kind of getting over that, because they're yeah, it's really old. Okay, we get it. You had sex. We had sexual relations with my girlfriend. I get it. Cool. Can I have her back now?
That's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I build her up, she hold me down, and we don't switch lanes. Yeah, that's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I keep it real and she do too. Can't play those kids games. Yeah, that's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I build her up, she hold me down, and we don't switch lanes. Yeah, that's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I keep it real and she do too. Can't play those kids games.
And it's just whenever people kind of just be oh yeah, when people say in records I respect women, but this and that, and I'm you don't need to say that in a record for people to I feel like since we live in a time where artists are now more personality driven than ever, it should be a lot easier for people to see the patterns in your actions rather than what it is that you're talking about in lyrics. You know what I mean? And I kind of wrote that as a means to be you know what, I want people to tune back into that and hold me accountable for what it is that I talk about in my own music. You know what I mean? So whether it's hey, this person did this person did that, or you felt this way, I want people to listen to that record and then actually hold me accountable for what it is that I'm saying.
Switch lanes, yeah, that's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I keep it real and she do too. Can't play those kids games, yeah, that's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I build her up, she hold me down, and we don't switch lanes, yeah, that's my baby. I call her Miss Thing. I keep it real and she do too. Can't play those kids games.
I always wanted to make sure that the record in itself kind of inspired guys as well. Not to necessarily just listen to the record and just be oh well, this happened and blah 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 blah. It's just you just kind of look at your relationships a little bit more in depth. You kind of see them you kind of analyze them for what they could be, what they are already in a sense, and even in that case, it's just I don't necessarily usually work with people that are just wildly misogynist, because I'm just why?
And I can't do this again. I got way too much shit up on my mind. The only place I got is home, so please don't take it from me. It's the only thing that I love right now. The only place to give my mama a hug right now. The only place I can go when the sun goes down. Don't take it from me. It's the only thing that I need right now. The only place I feel like I can breathe right now. The only place that I can feel free. So let me be.
There's a huge fight going on right now for the Harriet Tubman House. And there have been several people that I've known that have talked to me about the record, and they were this one really hit home, because this type of stuff happened to me. You know what I mean? And it'll be people that you wouldn't expect. But when I was writing the record, I was just kind of thinking about how I was really young and how I used to be like terrified that like at some point in time like me and my folks would like not have a place to live in a sense. And I've never necessarily understood the reason for it. Like they always raised rent, like my father was working a lot, my mother was working a lot as well. Even to this day, they both still work pretty hard, but it's like, when I wrote that record, I was always thinking about like, when I was really young and like how, whether it be eviction or gentrification or just anything in general that could have gotten me kicked out of my house, along with my folks, that we would have been homeless for like whoever knows long. I've always been super nervous about that.
Place that I can feel free, so please don't take it from me. It's the only thing that I love right now.
I feel like whenever it comes down to like the discussion of gentrification, it's always discussing like, oh yeah, like we could make so much money with this and we can make so much money with X, Y, and Z. But it's like, when it comes to somebody that would like be around the age of like 14 or 15 or whatever, or like just being black in a place like Cambridge or in a place like Boston where the rent is raising higher and higher, and like even as an artist, like venues are closing down, dance studios and complexes are closing down and like being turned into like housing or like real estate. It's like how, like what, like I feel like in a sense it's like, what is your final plea there? And it's like how exactly can you keep yourself like afloat in that regard? How exactly can you cope with that? And sometimes there's no happiness or anger or anything else. Sometimes it's just the sense of defeat, or just being like, you know what, like, don't take my freaking house from me, bro. Like straight up, like, and don't take away a place to me that like allows me to be myself when I can't be anywhere else. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, a paycheck or a sale or like any amount of money should not be worth somebody else's future or somebody else's like peace of mind.
See, I never had a whip, but I always had drop. Never had guap, but I always had dimes. Headed to the top, man, I'm always on climb, always on grind. Man, they know I'm always on mine, goddamn. Now it's off to the better me. I got the energy to last for a century. I don't give them bars, man, I give them penitentiary. I got juice, I drop dope shit like I'm elderly and hooked on methamphetamines. Don't ever question me, my spit game retarded. Who you really testing, B? Shorty think I'm selling out, cause she blessing me. She just get the dick, cause the heart sold separately. They so obsessed with me, but they ain't getting next to me. They just wanna hide something more, nothing less from me. My niggas wish that we could switch identities, cause I get enough double U's for an extra me.
There's not many places for us out here, you know? Like, when it comes to us, like black people, like there's not that many places for us out here. And some would even argue that this is the safest place for us to be, but even so, it's like you got places evicting and like doing gentrification, you got places closing down, you got people getting kicked out, you got people raising rent, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, where are we supposed to go from there? You know what I mean? And it's just like, oh, like, you know, it's always been the whole figure it out route. And it's just like, I feel like the one thing that we truly, really want is just to feel like we belong somewhere. You know what I mean? And I feel like that was the aim of the song, is just like kind of make it seem like, hey, like I want to belong somewhere, or I want to at least like have a place where I can call mine, or at least have a place where it's like I could leave for a couple years and then come back, and then nothing's being tampered with, like, you know, places aren't getting like completely renovated because, oh, like, you know, it looks really nice from the outside and everything, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I was getting at. It's just like, don't just completely change the way that like I grew up, because if I go back and I just don't necessarily see it, I'm gonna question every single thing that I've been through. And I feel like a lot of people kind of feel that way because it's like, yeah, like, would I even be able to, like, you know, walk through these neighborhoods anymore? I feel like that's also been like a huge thing that I've been thinking about. It's like, there's always been like this weird thing. Like, even when I walk through here, it's like I always feel super weird about walking through like Kendall and everything because I always feel like an outsider. And it's because people just kind of look at me like, you know, like, oh, like it's the urban kid or whatever. And it's like, there's so many people that also share that sentiment. And it's just like, it's like really scary to think that like there's a point in time where it's like, we won't be able to like, you know, walk inside of like the places that we literally grew up in without getting like really like confused looks as to why we're there in the first place. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
You can't touch me, bitch. I got big dreams since I was a fetus. Had a body of a nurgle, but the mind of a genius. I ain't timid or conceited. I'm just smack right between the sky. Ain't the limit, homie. I've been shooting towards Venus. Baby, why you thinking I'm obnoxious? I've been flexing for my city, baby. You can't stop this. Heard you been thinking I'm obnoxious. I've been going through it. Best believe you won't mock this. Whoa, baby, why you act like I'm obnoxious? Tryna ride the wave, guaranteed you won't top this. Hey, shorty, why you thinking like that? Shorty, why you thinking like that? Thinking like that. Woo, baby, why you thinking I'm obnoxious? I've been flexing for my city, baby. You can't stop this.